Welcome to the Breakfast Club, where industry leaders come together to explore strategies, spark ideas, and turn insight into action. In this Breakfast Club session, one industry leader shares how they run on open book management, department-level profit tracking, and data-driven leadership, creating a culture of accountability, transparency, and scalable success in youth sports. Let's now welcome Jennifer Evans.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. I hope everybody can walk away with a little bit of information or a nugget of information that helps you move forward with whatever your role is. I am the company president here at Kids First, but I've not always been in that role. And I started in 1998. Kids First opened in March and I started in May. And I was actually the department leader of our girls competitive team program for my first 7 or so years here. And then I transitioned into our preschool gymnastics program, which was Tumblebees, and I spent 13 years there. And then in the fall of 2019, I transitioned into the operations, the executive function of how Kids First operates. And we are a large multi-sports venue. So I'll show you a picture in just a minute on how large we actually are. But COVID happened in March of 2020, and I was in a kind of a vice president of operations role at that moment when it happened. And 2 months later, Jeff retired, and I transitioned into that president seat, which is where I've been since. And it was aside from the clunkiness of what COVID was, it was a very seamless transition because of the way that we share information and because of the metrics that we use internally. So in my role as the president, I'm measuring a lot of the same things the department leaders are measuring and more. But we also know that a lot of our department leaders are leaders in a department because they love children, they love to coach, they love to influence the lives and the development of young people. They don't necessarily love numbers. So when we're talking about operating in a role or a leadership style that offers information in this sector of financial targets, we've got to be sure we're breaking it down so that our everyday department leaders can follow it and understand it and then have some control. So I'm going to just walk you through that. At Region 6 Congress was the first time that I had presented this information, but this is part of what we talk with our department leaders about consistently over decades. And we do a portion of it at boot camp. And our in-house accountant, which we're very spoiled that we have, is a great educator as well. So I'm going to try to break some things down, but I do want to get into the why just a little bit. This is where I've been able to walk into this facility every day for the past 27 years. And I know it can be a little daunting to have a company of our scope and size with the volume that we have and think maybe those things don't apply to our smaller organization. But this isn't where we started. We've been in business for over 50 years, and we started right there with Jeff Metzger as the hub and spoke with about 16 to maybe 20 tumblers, I believe it was. And over the course of time of being very deliberate in what really matters. I don't know how many people are listening who love data and analyzing data, but we do have some. I'm one of those people, but we have people on our staff that will get into the weeds of data that doesn't matter. And I've done that as well. So we've tried to identify what are the important measurements? How do we make it easily and understandable for all of our people? And which ones do we really need to focus on at what level? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is us. This is our org structure. From the left to the right, you've got the shareholders, and that long column there at the end, those are our department leaders. The top 3 are the HR, hospitality, and facility. They have no revenue coming into their department. So they have to operate with targets as well. And we look at their expenses only as a percentage of company revenue. That's not really what we're getting into today, but I wanted to share that because even those kinds of targets and those parameters of how to operate your own department are really important for our people to understand. If we're asking them to hit targets or to be financially healthy, we have to help them understand what that really means and then what controls they have over that. We don't have job descriptions. We have company-wide responsibilities. And everybody's first one is the same, and that's to be the steward of our 26 points. And the last one is the same for each of us, and that's to help our supervisors and peers fulfill the responsibilities and generally make life more rewarding and enjoyable. This is what it looks like for our department leadership. We have 13 different departments, and actually 14 if we include HR, and 11 of those are revenue generators. So they all have the same exact department responsibility or company responsibilities, including leadership. They're responsible for hiring and developing and when necessary, firing people to maintain a safe environment. They're responsible for driving new clients and nurturing and building fierce loyalty of our current clients. Number 5, that financial health. They are responsible to manage the financial health of their department. And while they don't set their own tuition, we might collaborate a little bit. I make tuition decisions. They're responsible for everything else that has to do with their department and the dollars that run through it. They have the responsibility of creating curriculums and schedules, and a level 3 training is how they train their people within their department. And swim is going to look different than gymnastics, which might look different than cheer. To have a viable best plan means they've got to be training their replacement at all points in time. They've got to have a strong number 2 or number 3, and that's their bench strength. But not only that, they've got to have a documented bus plan for their department if they were to be hit by the bus. I won the lottery plan, so that might look different the next time you hear me speak on this. Obviously, we want to keep everything, we call it boot camp ready. We are getting ready to invite about 40 plus people into our organization for Metzger Small Business Boot Camp, and we always want all of our facility to be boot camp ready. And then most importantly is to make life more enjoyable for all. If you are responsible for a staff of people and you've got people who love working with each other, it feels very different than if you have a group of people who just don't want to engage with one another because they're just on different pages. So that's our final department responsibility. Right here is this is what our topic is today, and that's to manage the financial health of the department. We have to identify what that means for our people. I'm going to talk about how we share that information, what that information is, how we share it, and at what points in time do we share that. And I will tell you, the stronger communicators we have in those leadership roles and the more opportunities we create to share information with not just our leadership team, but also with our everyday crew member, the more everybody starts to understand how we operate. I have found over time, I'm going to show you, I'm going to break down a profit and loss statement by a department. And what I have found is we don't tell people where those dollars are going. They think that the greedy business owners are just pocketing all the dollars. So we want to be sure that they understand where those dollars are going once they come into a program. We have our key performance indicators, as most businesses do. It's the measurement that we use to monitor the company's financial vitality. And our people need to know what those key performance indicators are. If we've not expressed them out loud, but then we are using them to determine performance, then that seems a little bit unfair and one-sided to me. Our key performance indicators are fairly simple. It's their alignment with our core values. We reference those as our kids' first 26 points. We talked about gross profit margins and enrollment tracking. And I think Kids First has done a fantastic job with historical enrollment tracking. I'd be happy to come back and talk about that at another time. And then, of course, our department gross profit margin. That's what we're going to spend our time on today. We're thinking of a department for us is a separate revenue generating department. So our preschool gymnastics is called Tumblebees. Then we have our swim department, our optional team department, our lower level compulsory team department, et cetera. These are the profit dollars of the department divided by the revenue dollars equals that gross profit that is represented by a percentage. Each department has their own target, and that has been created and developed over time. And sometimes it gets adjusted. For the first time in 2 decades, we're adjusting some of those gross profit percentages for our instructional programs. We're talking about what do we share. First of all, we share everything. We are very open book. We are an open book management style of leadership around here. We share department level profit and loss. Each department gets their very own generated profit and loss statement the first week of the next month. So in May, they received April's profit and loss statement. That allows them to see how they're functioning, and their target goals are going to be an annual target. They might miss their target in the summer and they might hit it out of the park in the winter and then just sustain or maintain in the fall. We have these annual targets. Each department gets to see their own department profit and loss. At a quarterly financial meeting, we review the company profit and loss statement, and we talk generally about how each department is operating. We might say Tumblebee's profit line is up 3%, Gym Jam or gymnastics is down 2%. We don't get into the detail of their department profit and loss statement when we're in a large group discussion with anybody who wants to join. So that would be our executive team, our leadership team, key people, full-time people, but maybe we have some really great crew members in a swim program that want to see how we operate. They would be invited as well. We share all revenue and all expenses. We do not share the balance sheet, and we do not share a direct recognition of wages and salaries. They see those numbers, so they might see Tumblebee payroll dollars, and that's going to be for a period of time. Maybe it's for the month or the quarter or the year, but they don't know how those break down specifically for obvious reasons. We don't get into comparisons of wages and salaries of individuals. I mentioned that we use an open book style of management. And that's just so we can share the numbers. We use those tools and help us to forecast what's coming and how we're functioning currently so that if we need to right the ship, we have plenty of time to right the ship. We don't want to look at January in May. That doesn't do us any good in our organization. We want to know, keep our finger on the pulse of how we're operating. Jeff based a lot of his leadership style on Jack Stack's The Great Game of Business. The more people know about a company, the better that company will perform. And we've seen that over decades. It's interesting when we're in a large group. Our quarterly financial meetings might have 50 people in there, and that includes those department leaders, executive team, and anyone else who wants to join. If I'm a department and I'm underperforming, we are not using these numbers to embarrass or manipulate any kind of behavior. The numbers, if our people can understand, a lot of our department leaders are that creative style of leader. They love children, they want to create curriculum, and they love working with kids, essentially. Numbers are simply the language of the business. They tell the story of our company's performance and help us to forecast what lies ahead. And we've all learned that healthy numbers lead to healthy companies. So they're responsible for the numbers at the department level. I'm responsible for everything under that department line. We use open book management just simply for these purposes. It's to educate our people. So if there is a shift in management, if I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, does my number 2 or my number 3 have the knowledge that I have to be able to slide into this role and keep things moving for a period of time until some big decisions need to be made? We share perspective and we want clarity and understanding from the most involved employee to the person who's coming in and just teaching classes. Think of that 16 or 17-year-old again. Maybe they're a numbers person and they're putting those dollars together, 8 kids in a class, 16 classes in a week, and they're doing the math. They need to understand the value of the ratios, the value of full classes, et cetera. So we share that information as much as we can. For our department leaders, these are some of our top metrics: gross profit margins and company profit targets. Our enrollment metrics, we run enrollment reports through iClass. We use iClass for our class management system. We run enrollment reports the third Wednesday of every month, and then we input them into a spreadsheet so that we can review apples to apples by department and all inclusive every month at our quarterly meetings, and then of course annually. And we can go back. I think the spreadsheet currently is 2018 and 40 and forward. I like to look at least an Olympic cycle so we can see how we're comparing pre-Olympic cycle, post-Olympic cycle, et cetera. We compare trial conversions and enrollment distance. And for us, that means when someone signs up and attends a trial, how long does that take to convert them into an enrolled student? And we do that through iClass. My son actually has taken on some of our reporting, and we use the premium program of iClass so he can get some of that detail that maybe we can't get in the everyday reporting. And then we look at drops compared to new enrollments. But we look at monthly drops compared to monthly new enrollments. And obviously, if we have 20 drops and 30 new enrollments, we have a net loss of 10 students. So we're consistently looking and comparing to the previous month and year over year. And are we retaining students? Are we dropping students? Or are we attracting new people to our organization? And if not, then we start digging into the why. All right. We are a gross profit focused accounting system. And if this is new information to you, or maybe you haven't looked at accounting in this way for your specific departments, it can move fast, but I think we've simplified it. We're going to go through just a little bit of terminology first. A gross profit margin is simply the efficiency in which a specific department is being managed. And it's the difference in dollars between income and direct cost. Oftentimes people refer to their income. We use that same concept. We just call it revenue. Our department leaders will say revenue. On our profit and loss statements, it will say income because that's what QuickBooks uses, and we are a QuickBooks company. This is all the dollars coming into a company. The gross revenue or the department revenue is income that flows specifically to that department. So through iClass, they can give us our Tumblebee tuition and our Gym Jam tuition and our swim tuition. That's our income that's coming in for that specific department. We reference our direct cost as the cost of running the class. In QuickBooks, it calls it cost of goods or cost of sales, and we can't change that verbiage. But for Kids First, we say direct cost. And that is the direct or specific cost of operating a department. Teaching the cartwheel, teaching the swim lesson, our specific department payroll. So that's going to include the teachers that are on the floor, the department leader's salary, and all the taxes that go into that. But it does not take into consideration the benefits, the 401ks, et cetera. So specific department payroll. And that includes the supplies that are specific to that department, bubble stamps, et cetera. And then any specific equipment that is not a capital expenditure. So CapEx does not get applied to a department. Anything over a $2,500 purchase is going to fall in the CapEx category, which is accounted for on a balance sheet, not on the P&L. We don't ever want our department leaders to opt not to reinvest into their department because they're afraid it's going to hit their profit and loss statement. So if our team program needs, let's say, $5,000, it's probably much more than that. But if they want a new set of unevens, they're going to come in and talk with me. We're going to do a cost analysis on it. Or if our set is just defunct and doesn't work anymore, we're going to replace that. Or they might talk with our accountant about the same thing. Is this a good decision to make? Are we feeling good that we have the dollars to do that? But we don't want them to avoid making that kind of a purchase because they no longer will hit their target by the end of the year if they made that purchase. Just write that down and we can talk about that at the end when we do some questions. Our gross profit dollars, we teach our department leaders that their profit dollars that after the revenue comes in, the direct costs go out, and what they're left with is the contribution. Those are the dollars that go into the kids' first bucket. We reference it. It's the expense line, the general expense line, like our rent, our utilities, our equipment purchases, et cetera. Every department that is a revenue generating department has an annual gross profit target that is their responsibility to hit. They get those monthly P&L reports, so they know if they're over or under or right on target, and then they can adjust as needed. And we're going to talk about what might go into that adjustment. These are our current targets. Use them, steal them. They may not be applicable to you at all. There was a point in time when I was running the girls' team program, we didn't have targets. And at some point in time, Jeff said, we're going to start this gross profit margin way of accounting for each department. And what we did was just tracked over a period of time the dollars that came into the department, the dollars that went out, and what were we left with? What was that percent? The team programs you'll see on here, the team target is lower than our swim school department. Our swim school, all of our recreational gymnastics, including our preschool gymnastics, are a 74%. We were hitting our previous target of 72. It's been that target for over 15 years, but we were hitting it quite nicely. Our fixed expenses have increased since COVID. I'm sure yours have as well. So our general liability insurance has increased dramatically. Our labor costs for those of us like the executive office or our HR department or our hospitality department, those departments that don't have revenue against us, those things have increased. Equipment has increased. So we could not maintain that lower 72% and still be as financially healthy and viable as we felt we needed to be. Our ninja classes are still we're trying to gauge, is it 72? Is it 74? Sometimes it's right in between. We'll take this year to determine if the 72 is doable with a little tightening of the staffing efficiency belt, then we'll pop that up to 73 or 74. As you all know, competitive teams get the bad rap of being a loss in many gyms. We want to see for that girls optional team program a 45% gross profit margin. That means all their salaries in, all their revenue in, and that means we've had to adjust our pricing significantly. They hit that target and it's always a little bit tight. And to this day, I'm not sure, is that the right number? That's our target. That's what we shoot for. And that's what we hit last year in 2024. Now, our pre-team, those kids are in here fewer hours per week. So maybe our pre-teamers are in 2 to 4 hours a week. They're blowing that 72% out of the water. The ninja team, 72% target. The girls optional team, 45% target. And then everybody else is somewhere in there. Our parties, clinics, and program camps, those are all run within a department. And so what they're going to want is to ensure that that number helps them to hit that total program number. If we're running parties at 65%, it's going to be hard for Tumblebees to hit their total target of 74. If we ever decide that a party gross profit percentage is too high and it needs to be in the 60s, we'll separate those out and then we'll give a combined program target that might be less than the current Tumblebees. Here at Kids First, our parties run through the department. We don't have a separate birthday party revenue generating department. So Tumblebees runs parties, Swim runs parties, Aerial and Ninja run parties. And then summer camp is that target is tight. It's a 45%. We've run 12 weeks of summer camp, and actually June and July have become our highest revenue generating months for our organization, where there was a point in time when we were just a gymnastics company. June and July can be your low months. We added that summer camp option probably over 2 decades ago. And now June and July 12 weeks of summer, one of our highest revenue generating departments that we have. But they don't keep as much of the profit. So it costs to have the field trips, to run the buses, to feed the kids, to do some of the licensing that we do. And of course, just to maintain, they do all of our programming here, and that comes at a cost to the summer camp. So their target is 45%, and their department leader's salary is allocated every month of the year, not just those 12 months during summer. So her end of year goal is a 45%. Hopefully that was helpful. So I mentioned that the gross profit dollars from each department then go on to the contribution line. Each department understands the contribution or the gross profit dollars they're left with now go to the general expenses of Kids First. And then Kids First has our own target. Somewhere between that 15 and 20% profit margin is our company goal. And after we pay out those general expenses, we're left with a profit, or if we've not managed it well, we are left with a loss, which is obviously not the goal for any business. All tuition, all revenue that comes in. I'm going to keep using Tumblebees because that's going to be our profit and loss statement that I'm going to walk through. All department tuition comes into Tumblebees on that revenue line. Then there might be party revenue also on that revenue line. Special events which would be her open gyms, cartwheel clinics, etc. Any miscellaneous revenue that comes into that department level revenue or income line. And then what else is included? All of her direct costs, her department labor, her department supplies, and her department equipment purchases that are not CapEx. What is not included? All of these. We don't allocate for sibling discounts in that revenue or that cost line by department. We don't allocate any kind of rent for that department. Some organizations do. They'll say maybe Tumblebees uses just about 10,000 square feet of space inside Kids First. We don't carve out her rent and make sure we're maximizing all the use of the gym and the facility appropriately. We have a lot of shared programming, and I feel like that would get us into the weeds a little bit. And every time another department would want to come in and use the Tumblebee space, then are we allocating extra dollars for that? We just don't do it that way. So that falls on all of these things fall under that line, that department line. And this is debuting at boot camp this week, so I'm not going to steal it, but our marketing person just made another more visually appealing funnel that Jeff uses at boot camp. So you can see how those direct costs are coming in from the department. They go into the general expenses, and then we're left with that net profit of 15 to 20% as our target. Okay, this is a monthly profit and loss statement for Tumblebees. This is March 2023 compared to March 2022. And more recently, I have asked for that next 12-month look back. I think it's really important to keep those department leaders looking not just at a comparison to 12 months, but also to 24 months back. So if we're breaking this apart, that red square at the bottom down there, red rectangle, that's where our department leaders' eyes they'll just automatically go to that number. Remember, that's their target. So for this example, we're looking for a 74% profit margin. The department leaders have been conditioned to go to that number and see if they're hitting their target. But what I recognized is something was missing. We had some departments that their enrollment was low, or was dropping or declining. And we know that if our enrollment is declining and the tuition adjustment that we take doesn't make up for that, that can be a loss in revenue. So we had to go back and really emphasize that when we're comparing this year over year number, we've got to really pay attention to the revenue line first and see if we're up or if we're down in dollars, because the dollars matter to the company. So in this example, March of 23, Tumblebees brought in 182,800. Previous year was 160. And I've got screens on you can see on the far right how that changes in the percentage. And then we're going to look at the direct cost or cost of sales. Same thing. We've got 2023 compared to 2022. And we're looking directly at this line, our total cost of sales. I think someone was asking me previously, what all goes into the cost of sales or the direct cost? And you can see on there are some small equipment purchases, some marketing purchases, maybe some supplies that were specific to Tumblebees and staff appreciation, et cetera. So everything gets accounted for, and everything has a code that goes specific to that department. And I'll talk briefly about that as well. Compared to the 30,571. And you can see over here what that percentage of change is from 2022 to 2023. And we would expect the direct costs to go up because the revenue line also went up. So we would expect some kind of an increase. And then the net income or the profit, or the gross profit, also referred to as the net income, is 130, just under $140,000 in March of 2023, compared to the 130,410 in 2022. And then you can, of course, see the change of what that was year over year. Most importantly is that 76.6. So Tumblebees in March of 2023 was exceeding that target that they had, which that is an important element of the profit and loss statement that emphasizes that the cost of operating the department are being managed well. What I can tell you, if you can see, I believe in the next column over my screen covered, I believe it's 81%. I know that if a department that has a 74% margin is operating consistently at 81%, something's off. I don't know what it is, but something's off. And the department leader and I would have conversations. Are you overworked? Are you spending more time on the floor than what is typical? Because somebody else is on the floor teaching these classes, more kids, fewer teachers, or are we not paying our people well? Is it time to adjust some wages or some salaries? We shouldn't be hitting an 81%. That's not sustainable long term. We reference our gross profit trinity as such, three factors that determine the gross profit margin. This is really important for our department leaders to understand. They have control. That's why we share the information. So they have decision-making control. They have control over our student-teacher ratios. We know that if our ratio is an 8-to-1, that's the target ratio, but we're operating at a 6-to-1. We're not operating at 100%. We're closer to a 75% effective ratio. If we're doing that consistently on a schedule for preschool gymnastics, for swim, or whatever that department is that is missing their ratio, I know that it's going to be hard for us to hit our gross profit targets. And they likely know that as well. Our price per class is extremely vital, and our department leaders do not set the pricing. They don't have control. They can collaborate with me. They can give me their feedback. At the end of the day, I'm the decision maker on the pricing. They have decision making on how to manage their targets, and they have decision making on how to pay their people. They can have a start wage, a training wage, a final wage. They can adjust someone's wage 3 times in a year if it's warranted. They have to ask the question, what can we afford to pay people and stay healthy? That's determined by pricing and effective teaching ratios. And those payroll dollars can get out of control. Right after COVID, we had, I'm sure everybody had the same issue that Wendy's was starting people at $15, $16, $17 an hour. And we're asking 16-year-olds for their very first job to join us for 14. Our minimum wage here is fairly low, and 14 was high, but we were competing with these other employers. And I think there was a brief moment in time where we overswung the pendulum a bit and started people out a little bit high. Everything was off. We had a hard time managing our targets, but managing of the target was really the only control our department leaders had, because they weren't controlling who was coming in our doors. The revenue was low, and we couldn't take any pricing adjustments that post-COVID, at least we did not. If you get the payroll dollar wrong, it can sink your ship pretty quickly. So we often, with our new employees that are new to the workforce, we typically will start them at a training wage. It's higher than minimum wage, but we also have a process with our employment experience that we have check-ins at about 2 or 3 weeks of employment, and another check-in built in at 2 to 3 months of employment. And once they're independently taking groups and retaining students in their groups, and those are all measurable things, we can adjust their pay rate, and we tell them that in advance. So that way we're not stuck paying somebody a high rate that is not ready to go independently taking groups on their own right away. I feel really strongly that if we give our department leaders this financial responsibility and then we hold them accountable without the ability to control the outcome, we're setting them up for failure. And for me, there's nothing more frustrating than being thrown in over my head and then somebody telling me I didn't hit my targets, but I didn't even know what the targets were. So we share those profit and loss statements frequently, but we also give a lot of guidance on how to really understand them and what to do when you're not hitting your targets. A department leader, for example, this is a Tumblebees department. While her target is 74%, we know that there will be periods of time during the year that she's not hitting her 74%. She's got to understand her enrollment cycle, which then allows her to understand her hiring cycle, which means how much is she spending extra in additional staff training so that she can hit that year-end goal. Those are important notions to recognize so that we don't have a department leader have a ton of anxiety and stress when they're 2 or 3 or 4% lower than their target, because we also know that there will be months that they're a little bit higher than their target. So in 2023, this is just a simplified profit and loss report that our department leaders usually they'll put this together for themselves so they can track year over year. Our Tumblebee's department revenue was just under 1.8 in 2023. The direct cost of the department, remember the target, these numbers don't add up because I did the new 74, but the direct cost of operating that department was 440,000, which was 24 and a half cents on the dollar. We're hitting and exceeding targets because we give our people the autonomy to make those decisions, and then we give them direction and support when they don't understand why they're not hitting targets. When we had a particular department leader who had been in place for a couple of years when I took over this role, and she knew what the target was, but she was so directionless when it came to how I feel like I'm working really hard and I'm in the water a lot. She didn't realize what was in her control, like the efficiency, the staffing efficiency, and the wages that she was paying people. And if they can get behind the eight ball really quickly. I've had a few questions come my way. How much time does it take and who does it? That's a really great question. We know that not everybody has a bookkeeper. Our accountant she started in the summer of summer of 2020. We spent a lot of time talking about how important it was for our department leaders to be educated. We always had the information, but we didn't have somebody breaking it down. And when I started in my career here at Kids First, I thought I was going to be a high level coach for the rest of my life. That's what I love doing. I didn't I just knew the kids would come in, we had to pay the salaries, and that was it. I looked at my targets and my P&Ls, but I didn't really take seriously what I needed to do to maximize those dollars and how important it was for the company until Jeff and I spent a lot of time on that. If we have a department that is losing the company dollars in perpetuity, we have to really gauge what is the value that it brings to the company. If we think the team program if it's okay for us that it operates at a loss, we have to recognize there has to be value elsewhere. Is it bringing kids through the door? I will tell you, we have a huge following of daytime preschool gymnastics. Many of them have no idea that our team exists. Now, our evening people do, they see them out there. So we would not operate in our organization a program that doesn't have some type of positive profit margin after the direct costs are allocated to that department. The majority of the tracking is done by the department leader. So all credit card transactions or expenses, each department leader has their own credit card. It's a Ramp card. It integrates with QuickBooks Online, and then they code it in Ramp. They give that little code of what it was used for. Let's say it was used for Tumblebee's supplies. The payroll is done by each employee, and we have a lot of different department-specific codes. We use ADP for our payroll system. I could be a full-time hourly person, and I might spend 6 hours a week in swim, 10 hours a week in Tumblebees, 10 hours a week in aerial. Maybe some of that's teaching and some of that's admin. We have a code for all of those different things. So we have over-coded our departments in ADP, and that allows us to allocate appropriately each department. So we know where those dollars are being spent. So what programs track this? The revenue comes from, we use iClass as our class management system. From iClass, we get the reports and that gets put into QuickBooks Online. I did talk with Kim again. Kim is the accountant, and she said that the desktop version of QuickBooks is fairly antiquated. So if that's what you use and you've not yet moved to online, as she said, it is a time saver, and there are so many other reports that it offers that makes her life more simple. Kids First details our tuition, and that's done manually in QuickBooks. And all of the reporting is set up through another program called Fathom. So it goes from iClass to QuickBooks, and then she enters into Fathom, hits the button, and it spits out these department leader profit and loss statements. Ramp tracks the credit cards. I think I already said that. And ADP tracks the payroll, and iClass tracks the revenue. How often do we review this information and with whom, and do lower level staff get the details or the KPIs? The department leaders get it every month. The first week of each month, they get the previous month's P&L, and they share that with their key people as they choose. Some departments share it more freely than others, only because some departments understand it more than others. Every quarter, we review the company consolidated in a group, and that we're reviewing all the enrollment for that quarter, and we're reviewing how the enrollment is represented in the dollars. If they're up, if they're down, and by what percentage. We look at expenses, we look at travel, we look at owners' expenses, we look at everything except the balance sheet. and we show a list of the upcoming or future CapEx. So they do understand that there are some additional expenses coming down. If our elevator went out, we have an elevator because we have a second floor. If our elevator went out, that's about a $250,000 expense. Our people need to know that those dollars have to be accessible to the company. So we go through about $1 million worth of upcoming CapEx ongoing, whatever that might be. And anyone's invited to those financial meetings if they have an interest. So the department leaders make decisions on all their hiring pay, their raises, their staffing of their classes, schedules, and optional expenditures. Sometimes with an optional expenditure, if it falls under a CapEx, which is a $2,500 single expense or more, if it's something that has to do with expansion or equipment, that's a capital expenditure. If they need something like that, then we're going to talk about a cost analysis and a payback period and what it takes to pay that back. If it's just a safety issue, if a beam is broken and we can't put a kid on a beam, we're going to replace the beam. Our department leaders use all of their profit and loss statements monthly, quarterly, and annually to make decisions. We also use it to track department leader performance and for tuition adjustments. We call our annual reviews for our department leaders rendezvous, and we do those somewhere between April and June. And it's after all of the previous years totally closed out and we get through at least quarter one so that I can see how we're performing in quarter one. I'm going to look back. I have a look back in their enrollment. I have a look back in their gross revenue, in their gross profit, who hit targets, how far were they up or down. And there might be department bonuses based on that. The department leader might be eligible for a bonus, or we might use their department excess for their people that they would like to pay more, but they just can't make that leap to a higher wage. Maybe they instead want to give them a department bonus in the event that the enrollment were to trend downward for any particular reason. I mentioned in the beginning that when I started in the girls team program, we didn't have targets. It was just go do the thing and we looked at company dollars more so than specific department dollars. And then over a period of time, we realized we needed to get a little bit more on point. We were growing very quickly and we wanted the department leaders, Jeff wanted the department leaders to be able to track their progress. Was their growth, our cost more this year than they were last year? And you would think we've always had these, but that was in the early 2000s. And I think we had them in place for some of our class programming, but it was really, let's start tracking the specific department tuition or revenue, and let's start tracking the specific department cost. And then let's have conversations. How do we feel? Do we feel like we're able to give the kind of experience that our clients are paying for? We, like everyone, like most people in our Tumblebee department, we do stamps and bubbles and parachutes. What else do we do? Do we have giveaways? Do we have updated props and flair that we have out each week? Do we have photo ops that we want out there? And if we do, those come at a cost. Are we operating at that 80% that is giving us a mediocre product with a mediocre employee? Or have we, and our tuition is, we often say we have a premium product and it comes at a premium cost. There is a threshold for what our clients will accept for tuition. So we've got to take all these things and first start tracking and then start talking with your leadership. And then we went to 70 and then we went to 72. And for the past 15, 17 years, we've been at a 72% gross profit margin. And last year, Jeff and I had a conversation that we're going to adjust that to 74 because we were operating outside of the 72 and our general expenses just had gotten a little bit too extreme for us to continue to manage at that lower number. We want people to be on the same page and we want to share the information with as many people inside our organization as we can so they know the dollars are allocated to something. We know that our rent is somewhere around 14% of our. We know that our facility payroll is around 3% of our revenue. We know there's a target for every expense line. And when something gets out of whack, we got to pull it back and say, okay, do I have control over this? And if I don't, something else has to give. If rent were to adjust to, 1.5 times what it currently is, our profit margin would immediately shift. And then we would start looking at, okay, where can we increase our targets in the departments to help account for that increase in rent? Or do we just need to take greater tuition adjustments? So everything has a goal. And the first step I would suggest is take a look at the 2024 and a 2023 P&L, and we look at percentage of revenue for just about every expense line that we have. And do those feel comfortable? Are we continuing to increase our revenue lines so that those stay the same? Just really understanding how your money is being spent, how your dollars are being spent, and if you're happy with how they're being spent. If you're not happy with how they're being spent, then likely need to be some adjustments. The more people know about a company, the better that company will perform. Start the conversations, even if you don't understand what you're saying yet. And then you can reach out to people in the industry who do have a better understanding. I think it would be great to have Jeff and or Kim on here to just get in the weeds a little bit more if there are additional topics that you guys found helpful. We are a company that we like to share and we like to grow the industry. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to do what you're doing. I wish everybody was as open with sharing as you guys have made this. So thank you.
Welcome to the Breakfast Club. This is your go-to space for honest conversations, actionable strategies, and powerful insights, all aimed at helping youth activity leaders own their growth. Whether you're a gym owner, program director, or manager, the Breakfast Club brings together the industry's sharpest minds and most passionate voices to talk shop, share struggles, and celebrate wins. We meet early, we think big, and we get better, 1% at a time. Topics include retention and churn solutions, staff development and leadership, marketing and enrollment strategies, systems, culture, and customer experience, real stories from real operators. Hit subscribe, pour a cup. Let's grow. This is your Breakfast Club.